So, a very good morning, good evening, good afternoon to viewers all over the world. I welcome all of you on the behalf of Heartfulness Wellness Webinars. Heartfulness Wellness Webinars have launched a series of webinars starting from the pandemic situation to enable everyone in the community to understand what wellness really means and what are the different aspects of wellness which we look at. It's just not physical, it's just not mental, it's just not emotional, but it is an overall wellness where we as human beings strive to be as one. So today we have a wonderful session on food, health and wellness. A very uh, good shloka which my mother had introduced me to. So my mother used to have me chant Sanskrit shlokas in the morning before my lunch when I went to sleep. And this was one of the shlokas she had made me chant before I had my meals, which goes as such: Om Saha Nanavtu Sanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karvavahi तेजस्विनादितं मस्तु मा विद्वेष्वहि Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So it means that let us together relish, let us together be. And today, on this occasion, where we are looking at the entire world striving to form or to get resilient towards the pandemic, food becomes an important constituent. Not only how it comes to us, not only how we eat it, but also how it comes to us. So we have two wonderful speakers on the dais, and I would first love to introduce. I welcome Dr. Biradar. Dr. Biradar is the principal scientist of Agroecosystems and the head of Geoinformatics unit. Welcome, Dr. Biradar. I'm really happy and I'm proud that you're here. I'm privileged to introduce you today. He has humble beginnings from I was talking to him and he's from Karnataka, the same state which I hail from. So we share common beginnings. He's a son of a farmer with a multidisciplinary educational backgrounds in forestry, genetic engineering, ecology, and space applications, with a core research focus on revitalizing agroecosystems for improving food, nutrition, and ecological security. That is a big field, Dr. Biradar. It's amazing. He developed several innovative methods and models for biodiversity farming, for enriching diet diversity, better health, and conscious living. Dr. Biradar has also authored over 210 scientific publications, including 125 plus peer-reviewed journal articles and 25 books or book chapters. He has received, needless to say, he would have received numerous awards and honors, including the Best Team Initiative, Young Scientist, and Outstanding Scientific Awards. Welcome, Dr. Biradar. Our next speaker is Dr. V.Ramakantha, who is a former Principal Chief Conservator of Forests. He is a former member of Indian Forest Service and has been superannuated as the Principal Chief Conservator of Forests. In over 3 decades of career in his forestry, he has held many executive positions and has the experience of managing some of the most ecologically rich national parks and sanctuaries of India. He is an academician of repute. He has authored many books and peer-reviewed articles on forestry and wildlife. His wildlife photographs have received worldwide recognition. Presently, he is a member of Green Kanha team in Kanha Shantivanan, Chegur village, Hyderabad, and he's a wonderful person. It's fun with him. He's full of life. So I welcome both of you. And as I start this session, I'm really privileged to be with you all. I would now request you to go ahead with your conversation and also enlighten us on the value of food and how we can apply the same in our daily life. Thank you. I request Ramakant to take it on from here.
Thank you, Dr. Chandrashekhar. Thank you, Dr. Snehal. Wonderful. Uh, I begin with a remarkable statement made by Sri Ramchandra of Sajanpur, affectionately known as Babuji Maharaj. He says, food, life depends on food, health hinges on nutrition. A profound statement which needs much of an elaboration. I repeat, life depends on food, health hinges on nutrition. Six constituents of food, we all know: carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, minerals, and water. I would begin this discussion with a thought as to what ought to be our food. What should constitute our food? Should we be vegetarians? Is meat eating a must for a long and a healthy life? Much of humanity consumes meat, dairy products, eggs, and vegetables. I somehow chose to be a vegetarian. No dogma involved in that. I had always been a rational human being. Often I wondered, chicken, ducks, and such domesticated animals eat everything. Eat a chicken or a duck, and your problem of nutrition is solved. And then I understood the value of being a vegetarian when I joined 2.5 decades ago Heartfulness Institute. They don't insist on a vegetarian diet. The founding president, Babuji Maharaj, jokingly said, if the saints of ancient India were to have been born in a cold climate like Siberia, they may not have insisted on a ritual bath every day and a vegetarian diet. Somehow, something, we all know that meat eating is environmentally most damaging. We may face moral dilemma. For me, one experience in my life knew from the core of my heart, I said, I shall stick to a complete vegetarian diet, whatever happens. As a sensible human being, I consciously avoid any animal being slaughtered. I have never seen. However, once I was traveling in Nagarhoda National Park, I was the director. I was driving my jeep, a gypsy, and I saw a pack of wild dogs cornering a spotted deer, and then they tore it apart, their prey, and in no time there was no trace of that spotted deer. The violence involved in that shook me to the core of my heart. I'm told maybe as animals they go by instinct. There is no judgment involved in that. But as a human being, I didn't want this violence. So I chose to be a vegetarian because of that. In the Heartfulness Institute, Daji explains it beautifully. All things that we see, feel, touch, they're endowed with three distinct bodies. One is the physical body, subtle bodies, and a causal body, Atman, Ruh, soul, call what you want. In a rock, these three bodies are tightly packed. There is not much freedom. In a plant, less so. In an animal, it is much more free. When you consume the meat of an animal, these three bodies merge into our subtle bodies. Consequences could be, it can be very heavy, to say the least. If we seek spiritual elevation, unfortunately, quite a number of people may not even know what it is. There is much more to human life than what meets the eye. When our food becomes subtle, we feel lightness in our body, light in the mind. That's a very simplistic way of telling, but it has enormous advantage. At the same time, 2 decades of my adult life, I never cared. I did not know about a balanced diet. In those times, not many, my friends, nobody talked about a balanced diet. Somewhere around 40 years or so, I started, gathering information about macronutrients, micronutrients, vitamin K, the vitamin P, so many things. And I started wondering, where will I get my molybdenum? Where will I get my B12? Hardly, you don't find it in vegetarian diet. And there was a kind of a apprehension that if I stick to a vegetarian diet, will I be living long? I never aspired much. I wanted to be healthy like all of us. Then I was wondering, will I remain a healthy person? And then I also observed the hidden hunger. It is this hidden hunger doesn't make us hungry. It is a disease, malnutrition, which has detrimental effect on our health, core health. This caused by lack of deficiency in our nutrients. And most of us, we consume 20 odd foods on a daily basis. I realized relying on bhendi and bingan and beans and potatoes, it's a bad recipe for a good health. So what do? What constitutes a healthy diet? What should we be eating if we want to live a long and healthy life? Then I read a whole lot of books. I'll show you one here. I would recommend all of you to read this. The China Studies. 417 pages. T. Colin Campbell, PhD, and his son Thomas M. Campbell, MD, they have written this magnificent work. And then another book which subscribes to my whatever principle that I hold. I hope you see this. One Morris, a great person, he lived many years on a diet of fruit alone and wanted to live on air only. And he almost succeeded. So now I understand meat eating is not okay. And the key to be a healthy person is to have dietary diversification. And should be true for many other countries. I extensively, traveled in this country, India, ancient culture, mega biodiversity country, pervasive influence of different alternate, what they call, systems of medicine, Ayurveda, Siddha, folk medicines. And then, more importantly, traditional knowledge. Here is a plant, the leaves of which no animal on earth eats. No goat, no sheep, no donkey, no wild boar. None eats. No animal can eat it. If you eat it, try it as a food. You may like to go to a doctor. And then we in Karnataka, we make a mouth-watering dish out of this. And so do the Gujaratis, the patra they call it, Colocasia esculenta. So everything is not based on trial and error. We have intuitive knowledge. Something is very good. There are people, saints of India, who could speak to these plants. Okay, what will you help me? What disease can you cure? Whether you believe it or not, I mean, this is my understanding. So the trick is to diversify your food as much as possible. A whole lot of whole grains, the, the carbohydrates is not bad, but then refined carbohydrate is a cause for much of our misery. Millets, we are bountiful nature, a lot to harvest upon. Vitamin B2. I lived in Manipur for a decade, come across this extraordinary community called Meiteis, masters in harvesting the bounty of nature. And then their fermented food is very tasty and then very healthy. In peas, vitamin B12, negligible quantity. They make a dish called soybum, a must for on all feast days. This negligible quantity of 0.3 to 0.4 microgram per 100 gram becomes 8 microgram per 100 grams of this peas. No, there is a way in which we can enrich our food. People talk very high of, the cold water fatty fish, salmon-like fish, as a wonderful, important, probably without it you don't survive. That kind of a thing is said. Almost all over India you find this purslane. There is one of the amino acids which the human body doesn't produce, or if it produces, but with a very long process. Alpha-linolenic acid becomes eicosapentaenoic acid through a very long and a wasteful energy process. This particular vegetable, it grows wildly on all roadsides. You find it. Lemony green salad material, extraordinary source of eicosapentaenoic acid. It has as much as the cold water fish like salmon. You can cook a whole lot of things. Aloe vera can be made into a beautiful recipe. 40 years, I never cooked food for myself. I thought it's a total waste of time. And I advise that, if you are a very creative genius, I thought I'm one, very foolishly probably, I keep on sketching, painting, things like that. One day I may also become like Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo, whatever I can be, somebody great in this world. Cook food, spend an hour cooking. Within 1 hour, there will be no trace of what you did. Not a very wise thing is what I thought. Somehow, in my 40th year, I started cooking. I don't know if we call it samskaras. Enjoy it. It's a very great creative process. And then for several years, I simply learned the traditional cuisines. After many years of this cooking, once in a while, of course, I gained the confidence of making some new recipes, like an aloe vera can be a very delicious food. In Ayurveda, much of the books that I have written also says that don't eat because it is very healthy for you. You should enjoy the process of eating. Make it nice, tasty. And then here comes the traditional knowledge. The Havyakas, they are the Shiva Bhakta, they use Bilva Patra, eagle marmalades. They offer it to Lord Shiva. After that, take the leaves, take a little bit of ghee, Add some cumin seeds, add some peppercorn, fry gently for a while these bilwa patra leaves, add coconut and then add some curd into it. You have a mouth-watering delicacy, a delicacy which is so very good. In the past few years, I've been reading about what does science know about these plants. I'm telling you, many peer-reviewed articles have written, they say on all the sacred plants of India, they call so-called sacred plants, they have enormous medicinal value. Many active principles, some they could decipher, science is yet to discover much. For example, kokum, now it's become very popular all over India. Hydroxycitric acid is the active principle, which is a bio-slimming agent. So, in essence, what I am trying to say, this is all. I leave it to Dr. Chandrashekhar to speak the other aspects of food. All I can sum it up is confidently I can say you can exist on a vegetarian diet, not just vegetarian diet, you can lead a very healthy life. A long life can also be, it cannot be an assurance because health, suffering, all these things, it has deep connotations. Believe me or not, karmic principles are involved. But then, wrong diet can ensure ill health. Good health, for good health, you can have a diversified vegetarian diet. A tambule is something, maybe I will have another session of conversation with Dr. Chandrashekhar Biradar. I will be talking about how to make mouth-watering dishes of, believe me, 100 different vegetable matters, many of which can be grown inside your home, even if you are dwelling in a flat, an apartment in a city. With that, I hand over this to Dr. Chandrashekhar Biradar, a great friend of mine, a wonderful person. He had come to Kana Shantivanam. I had some wonderful time with him. Sir, it's your time. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Ramakant. It's wonderful, and in fact, it is most like what's called insight of the food systems and wild food system we explained so well. And first of all, thanks for this opportunity to speak on the food and its link to the health and wellness. Thanks to all the team and the making this happen. And let me share my screen. So just in continuations of what Dr. Ramakant is already explained. So can you see my screen? If the voice is clear. So this is in continuous to what Dr. Ramakant is explained about the different types of foods and its impact and its nutrition and how best it can replace its meat and now this growing demand for the protein-based diets. So what I'm going to talk about in continuation to what Dr. Ramakant and the Dr. explained earlier, so that even that sloka that started in the beginning, so that's basically talking about how the food is important in our system. So what I'm talking about, the vital food system for conscious living and conscious living and planetary health. And as you know all, I start with this COVID because this is what everyone know now, and how the COVID is impact on the global food security. So you all are aware of that and how this impacted our social movements and food movement, and also triggered thinking about the healthy food systems in the world and how much the people affected all over the world. And when the COVID is first hit and they declared as the pandemic across the world, and the advice coming from the World Health Organization is that food The healthy food, it's consist of the fruits, nuts, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and whole grains. So never talk about the meat. That was the first food advice coming from the expert. But most of the media is focused on the mask and sanitizer, but never talk about the food itself. So that's eat right is the key thing. When we build an immune system, and system itself is so strong enough, and we shouldn't worry about the virus. So that is basically like a food is a health care, and medicine is the sick care. So that and you look into the food, it's not just like health is just the only living what you call healthy, but it should be the life full of energy and exuberance. And that is controlled by the way we eat. And in terms of all the Buddha cities, and they're talking about the clean air, clean water, and vital food, I'm sure that the food is going to play important role in our the mind and body. And look into that, just the food means that often we talk about, okay, whatever things we eat it, but often people not understood that what is the vital food and what is the regular food. And we eat often we eat a lot of the food is called empty calories. Basically, we call it as the belly full hungry cells. So that because of the cells require that nutritions, this comes from the crop diversity, and basically start from the farm diversity, number of the crops you can grow, as Dr. Ramakantha explained. Even there's hundreds of the wild varieties, that we neglected them. And that adds to the diet diversity. That's build what we call the gut biome. Because of we always see that the gut feelings, that you want to do something important work, we call always a gut feeling, not a brain feeling. So means it's basically the gut makes the brain and rest of the things. That's linked to the immunity and health. So what is happening in the last few decades, and we are migrations like a job seek and everything's moving away from the rural landscape, living in the urban settings. There's a huge change in the demographics, and that leads to the change in the food system. So that we're basically trying to provide a immediate need of the food to survival rather than the focus on what you call a nutrition. And this is basically the global challenges. We are the crossroads of the world food systems, where we cannot continue our current trajectory of the consuming too little or too much or too wrong food. And basically we need to looking towards the more what we call a sustainable living and planetary health. So it's not just looking at our own things, but we should looking at the entire system as a whole. And that comes to the where called in the quantum physics or quantum theory. Health is a continuum from the living soil that link to the plant or food and human and animals. So basically that vitality of the foods and that connected is the continuum. And I like just look into all the 17 the UN SDGs, and food is the one thing that links to every sustainable development goals in one another way. So this is how the food is played the important role. But what happens in the last few decades in order to meet the demand? So we have completely changed the food systems of what used to be in the diversified systems, moving towards the monocropping. And what is now we're looking at, that's what you can see, this is called the planetary health boundary. Anything we are growing within that dotted lines, that is what called a health boundary. Anything comes out that, just look into the meat and potatoes and eggs, is basically the grown of that healthy boundary. That's where the system is collapsing. So basically we need to move back towards the yield focused and the calorie focused to the nutrition focused and what you call more wealth per acre. So that's where we're talking about bring back that diversity, increase the plant-based the diversity, and balance ecosystem that strengthen the food and ecological security, that enrich our how we eat a food. As Eat Lancet report clearly written by the huge number of the scientists across the globe, and they recommend that at least our 50% of our plates should constitute fruits and vegetables. But I'll come back to on that one, so that why we are not there yet. And just looking to the plant diversity, as Dr. Ramakant mentioned earlier as well. And we have anywhere between about 200,000 edible plants. Now I recently got it about 300,000 plant species are edible. Out of that, only 6,000 are used as a food. And out of that, only 150 crops are cultivated as a significant scale. And out of that 150, only 3 crops dominate our food systems. Nearly about 60 to 70%. That comes from the wheat, rice, and maize. But as a health systems, you look at it, the healthy, the gut biome, we required anywhere between 150 to 300 food elements in a month, but we're eating hardly 10 to 15, means we're not having diversity in the food. And that is really the dwindling the what you call the crop diversity. What used to have so much of diversity in our landscape. Just take a look at the pulses, what you call the plant-based proteins or legumes that used to have 65,000 land races of that. And just look at the example I'm showing here, the rajma in one state alone in Uttarakhand is growing more than 50 types of rajma. Look about all the other food legumes across the India, how much of the diversity used to have, but now brought down to the only 12 of them. So this is basically lost huge amount of the crop diversity. Not only that pulses, but look into the every species. Look into the, when go to the market in the past, you got that different types of tomatoes and radishes or the peas and cucumbers and brinjal, everything. But now you get only the one or two types of tomatoes. Basically that's bred for the high, what you call the perishabilities and high the shelf life rather than nutrition. So this is where we lost huge amount of the food nutritions. And why nutrition is important in changing the diet, the landscape or cropping systems. Just looking at the legumes and amount of the resources you can use that. Just like a one meal of the plant-based proteins, it takes about 1,000 to 1,100 liters. Sometimes, like I overestimated, like 1,250 liters. But just looking to the like animal-based proteins, we are basing the doubling, quadrupling, even 30 times more the water resources needed just to meet the same amount of the protein needs. So this is basically how required a paradigm shift towards the more yield calorie, towards the more nutrition, changing the landscape. So why you all talk about, you look into the like all the health issues are weight, overweight, obesity, everything, and also like a lot of chronic health issues. Always recommend that we have to the diet diversity and we have diet the high rich in fiber, and because of our gut biome is made up of the trillions of the bacteria, and basically they outnumbered our own cells. It's 1:1:10. So it means we are basically the germ body that require a lot of the fiber. Where the fiber come from? It's come from the plant-based proteins. That's where we're looking at it. So often, as I said about how the mind is connected to the gut and the gut versus to the health. So just look at mind, what you eat and you become. So that's well known the thing. And also like a lot of this, what we call used to be the very rich grains in the past, what you call siridhanya, what you call as a minor millets. And now they're taking the shape and coming back to the main food streams because of they grow everywhere, drought resistance and the climate resilient, but also they are water efficient and also the pest and disease free and huge nutritions. So basically that brings back a lot of the forgotten food systems, what you call ancient grains. And as recommended that at least nearly of the 50 food items is required a given month. And I would say that it's just not that enough, that we have to be more than that. But already that's make a big good progress towards achieving the human and planetary health, and that need the shift in the diet pattern, which are ecologically sustainable, economically viable, and predominantly the plant-based and with high diversity, high vitality, and seasonality and local. That is the most the critical thing. So this is often we neglected that the soil health, and that is basically the build the nutritions. And often you grow a lot of this chemical based the food systems. Often you forget that the micronutrients, what Dr. Ramakantha explaining about the micro and macronutrients. It's a lot of these micronutrients, they come from the living soil that enrich the food and what you eat. So basically that builds up the what we call the smallholder farming, family farming, where they still feed the most of the world, and they're still dwindling, they're struggling because of despite that they're growing all the healthy foods, but the margin and profit is not go to those real the food growers of the world. And this is where we need to re-enrich that the forgotten food systems. And world as climate change happening, we're losing a lot of the green cover across the world and cut down a lot of the tree cover within the farming systems. And we need to restock that lost food diversity with edible food systems, edible landscape that are locally and seasonally, so that we can provide us the sufficient food systems in the it's called what we call it as a edible mandala, the landscape Vatka. Basically, it's talk about the different diversity of food in such a nice geometric fashion, so you can grow so much of the food in a small landscape. I'll give the example in a few minutes how much of food you can grow in one small landscape, in a small space. So why we need to have this, the changing the food systems, because we've seen that the climate change happening, and 1 year very good rainfall, other is very drought. It's happening the frequent all over the world, and also changing the seasons, and our growing season becoming shorter. That has an impact on the entire the soil biota and soil health. This required rebuilding our food systems, rebuilding our living soils. That's where it comes to the family smart agriculture that required to enrich the nutrition in the food systems. Why it's very important, why you need to be grow your own food or eat in the local food markets and the local farmers market, because of a lot of the food nutrition lost from the harvest to when reach your plate. So that as in average, that 30% of the nutrition in the vegetables and fruits lost the time they harvested and reach your plate, because of they harvest, they travel food from the long distances. Because of that, they have to harvest much in advance before maturity. Then they have to store in the certain the storage conditions with certain sprays of chemicals to not to ripen. Then you have to put into the shelf in the supermarket. They have to spray something to ripen overnight. So basically, we are harvesting the food even is not ready to eat and eating them. Just an example, I'm telling that other day, some of the people talking about why we need to grow the food at home, and our local market, our farmers market that reach within a day. So that has a lot of the research is showing that, for example, spinach, and it need lose about 90% of its nutrition within 24 hours from the harvest. That means basically you buy from the supermarket, and they harvested already few minutes, few days early, and you already lost most of the nutrition. I'm just talking about one of that, but this applies to the number of the things. There's the famous proverb there that tells in Kannada that "Kasa tinnuvudikinta tusu tinnuvudale." That means that better to eat less good food than the more junk food. That applies so much in the vitality of the food systems. You can look at this whole food of the world and food vitality. They talk a lot about how important is the vitality. What we call in Vedic system, it's called pranic food, and prana of the food means. So that's very well known that one the living food basically is like the freshness of the food that constitute your health and the living things. If you're eating the dead food, basically that's not going to enrich the entire your food and wellness. So just having that. How is impact when you grow food at home or a local farmers market, still that can be able to reach out. This is what's required now when the farmers the harvest and reach out to the consumers in the same day. This is where it comes to the local food and the farmers market going to be enrich the future of the food systems. And the same thing if you put in the supermarket and the big value chains and their storage and the processing, and you lose most of the nutrition there. It's not only the loss of nutrition, but it has a huge impact on the environment in terms of the food miles, traveling up the miles, long distances, at huge carbon footprint, and packaging materials like a plastic and all things. That's basically impacted the huge on the environment and sustainability. So basically, we have to enrich that the local souvenirity of the food and connect with the nature. This is because the food is not just like eat, because of the growing and building that living systems, and that helps us to connect to the nature and be responsible citizens of the earth. And I always say that best investment parents can do for their children is to take them to the nature. Or if your nature is not near to you, bring the nature to you by growing something in your own backyard or home or something like that. So this is where just giving some example of my daughter harvesting the 7 type of the carrots and rainbow carrot, eating it. And in the very now research showing that the carrots eat now in the grown into the very high intensive agriculture systems and not have any nutrition. And you need to eat 8 more carrots to get the same amount of the vitamin A and beta carotene what used to in the and 30 years ago, the 1 carat. So the same thing applies to the number of the apples or like apricot, everything. So you need to eat more apples to get the same amount of the apple used to get in the past. Because that's basically, we lost a lot of the nutrition in the food. And food is joy of growing and eating is the basis of a healthy thing. So that when you eat the food, it should be joyful. And that is what brings the healthy, the living. And often the questions comes back. I just start with being basically the keeping in mind of the millions of people. They are not access to the good food across the world during this COVID landscape and COVID lockdown. And often they come back to me where I can go grow the food, where I can find a space. I found that like I built a number of models and showing that the food you can grow in anywhere in the small walls and windows and balcony, terraces, rooftop, front, backyard, even tabletop shelves. Like even nothing else there, you can grow the microgreens in your even kitchen top. So that's really there is no space is the limitations. Basically, is like how we can build your own way to grow them. Just looking into this is, you won't believe that what I'm showing here is the garden city of India. It's a Bangalore. Look into the rooftop of the entire the city. It's nothing is growing there. It's completely empty. And then also like looking across the world, often is become a junkyard on the roof, or it's become a satellite dishes or something like that. And 98% of the world rooftop is not used for growing anything. That can be turned into the like a real landscape and do something and grow. And that's giving just an example of the cities urban landscape, because of most of the cities, the populations moving towards the demographic landscape urban. And this is where I brings to the diversity and biodiversity gardens, where health and wellness begins. And often I recommend that if you do not have the idea, you can make the seed balls together, multi-local seeds together, grow, and nature will decide what is work and what is best for you. And that's called a biodiverse gardens, where the taste and flavor originates and where health and wellness begins. And this is just giving some examples of the I moved from the America, why I started this biodiversity gardening or something like that. When I moved to America, being a vegetarian family, and very hard to get a vegetarian the diets. Usually get few the lettuces and capsicums, those kind of things. And I thought, wow, this is only a few things you can have food. And how about the rest of the other the rich of the diversity used to enjoy when I was in India and the Sri Lanka when I was working there. And then each one capsicum costed me nearly $1. And then I thought it's not worth. We are paying about $200 to $300 a month and a week on the food basket and the organic foods. And then I thought we start the kickstart our own gardening experiment. And in our own gardens, that we grown about nearly more than 237 types of vegetable, fruits, and flowers and herbs. And you won't believe that there is the nearly 63 types of tomatoes you can grow in the home gardens and in the family farm. And they are different colors, flavor, different use and things. I'm not going to talk all the details here. I just give you the examples of how much the diversity of the food we have. Still, we can revitalize this lost diversity in the home gardens. And this is where why I focus on home gardens. The most of the elite people, they live in the urban landscape. Often they are not tasted the real food. The idea of here is to even they grow even small foods, and even one tomato themselves, they know the value of how much the farmers spend time to grow the tomatoes or any food, and then they start valuing the food and the flavor of the food. And this is where I think that changing the taste bud, that is also important here. We talk about a lot of the pests and diseases in the farming systems, everything. I always think that the living soil, the good soil, is the source of the resistance to the every pest and diseases, even addressing the nutrition as well. And of course, the enriching the birds, bees, butterflies in the city landscape. That's where brings the real, what's called the volume of the diversity in the urban landscape. And often wastage become one of the biggest issues in urban landscape. We are throwing out nearly about 50% of the food scraps and the food waste in the garbage or landfilling. I thought that is the best way to make use of the composting. There's a number of ways to compost. We can discuss a lot on that. There's a lot of the online YouTube material available to anyone can to make use of whatever the waste, the food scrap. You can grow your own vegetables, and also design the number of the small, easy way to do the food composting, pipe composting, and returning residues back to the soil that produce the food. And also the limited landscape, or like in urban landscape, you not enough space in the balcony, something like that. what I design, we call multi-layer garden. So basically you have the large pot, you can grow a number of the vegetables and fruits and tubers together. And it's not just only the enriching the diversity and symbiotic relations and also the diverse food, but the when food grow together, symbiotic relations, they're rich in flavor, nutrition, and taste. For example, you can grow the basils with tomatoes and very good. The tomato eat is completely different flavor and the nutritions. And it's also help the plants to the fight different the pest and diseases impact. So this only giving the example in the pot, but they can same can be you can take into the your farming system. Just as an example. So this is the COVID the lockdown. The number of people ask me that I have a very small balcony. I not have the big space. How can I do that? And the idea is that one not to like grow everything you need here, but grow something that know that real organic food and natural food how it tastes like, because we do not know that what market selling that even the organic brand, but you not know the taste because still they're growing the high intensive farming systems and too much of the inputs and the nutrition fertilizer. In small pot like this, the 8 square feet, the small pots you can use for the used the wood and pallets. And you start within a month, you can harvesting so much. You started like a May 20 and the kids then they started like harvesting so much of the different food. And within 20 days, like they're harvesting so much of the fresh nutritions in all kinds of the leaves. Nearly 15 types of vegetables you can growing in this small pot. And think about the same thing you adapted to the farming system dynamics, how much food you can grow. And then the same picture I'm showing here. So see that basically every leaf here is you can harvest and eat them. And that can grow into the tall and you can harvest quite a number of the food. And basically small space provide a regular food and diet supplements. Often we are in urban landscape or in small farming systems, and often management and maintaining those the pots and watering become big issues, so that we have so many solutions coming up. There's so many startups they're talking about, and automated irrigation systems. You can basically ancient the pot technology is modern touch we design to that one you can use, and you can build your own. For example, I just put into the small the structure here, and you can completely automated the irrigation systems where you can, based on there's no overwatering, there is no underwatering, and the plant the absorb based on that the diffusion of the water releases the water to the plant, so that when you're traveling for weeks together, then this will take care of your plants and its nutrition. And same thing we design into what we call a water sense auto irrigation system or farming system. When I'm growing in the US, my backyard very big, an half acre, and then have my job is demanding too much of the work and not enough time to spend and the watering those things. So we designed I tried number of different way of irrigating the raised bed garden, and completely automatic. You sense the water, is the rain is going to come in 2 days, it's not going to water. So that way you can efficiency in the water and irrigation, just like the 1/3 of the water you're using, you can produce enough food. And also like I'm coming from the very rural India, where you see this kind of the landscape, a lot of this, the people take a shower and like a bath and washing clothes and utensils, that water comes and stay in the street and become stagnant, become mosquito issues and number of the health issues. And now because of government India, Swachh Bharat missions and Swachh Nirmal Shauchalaya, those things they initiated, what I thought about is designing. Why can't we make you build into the pits, like soap pits, and plant something like around that pits? And that's become your, what we call the real food gardens. And this way, we can, instead of that, like become the unhygienic place, become a really healthy place to live there and grow your own food. And secondly, this kind of the garbage water, the reaching to your drain systems and river that reduces, and also the bring back to the culture of reaching the organic, the cleaning things, so that you not have entered all chemicals to the food system. I give just example like that. So that the place used to be like even not wanted to see that, and now that's become the kids' playground. This is kind of the simple ideas they can start it. And this is where my first, the every big thing starts with small beginning. This is where my first 8 by 8 square feet garden. So that's just giving the example of the, when I not have any background on the gardening, everything, Then I started growing these things especially in the temperate climate like in America. And then I started enriching a lot of them, and I started reading a lot of these different books and varieties of the food you can grow and climatic conditions. Then I tried everything, throwing every plant possible into that landscape that flew into the what you call it's a food jungle. In 85 square feet, you can bring so much harvesting. Then I thought that why not expand that into the different experimental things. I did a lot of the models and build, and this is what I call it. If you won't have the time to go to the nature, at least bring the nature back to your home and back at. This is where it started. The small project encouraged all this. In America, there's an opportunity to have the big backyard. Every house is like that, so that most of them are only the turf grass is growing, nothing is edible, putting too much of the chemicals into that. Why can't you turn that into the food forest, the food landscape? Let's turn into just a huge amount of the food. That's become the backyard become a research lab to endless experiment. This is where I experimented so much of the things, different soil combinations, helping the people to what we can grow and how we can grow and how much. Because basically I do call it as a do nothing gardening, and basically you can plant something, let your system take care of everything. And this is where the importance of the multiple species growing together and symbiotic relations among and enriching the landscape that helps really the wildlife and the local biodiversity, flora and fauna. So basically it's your small initiative of this small home garden. Even you can grow one plant in a single pot, that's still enriching the millions of the fauna in the soil as well as the things. This is the same thing. I'm moving across the world in different places. Like I moved to Jordan, then I started there. Then now I moved in Cairo. And this is the one a roof I came here to the house. Then nothing was growing here. This became a dump pad. We turned that into such a wonderful, the productive garden, and within a few months. So basically, diverse choices of food you can, with great flavor, taste, and nutrition, get in the reach of your hand. And this is where we can build that the systems that you can store them. We can enrich this food and nutrition. The system, basically what we talk about of food, it is highly linked to the health, and the health is basically the link to the wellness. And the food, health, wellness, if you eat the right food and what you eat become you. So what we call that always, the food makes the food often we think about anything we eat is food. No, it's not a food. Food should be the vital. Food should be it should be exuberance of the energy into that, and it's growing in such the high diversified landscape that it has all the nutrients and the fighting mechanism to the pest and themselves. So that has a high nutritions, and this is where we started diversifying the food systems, the basis of the systems. And also a lot of the storage of the food, you can go back to ancient system, what you call a balaka, and where you can dry the food and store them, like a lot of the tomatoes, onions, and the overgrown during the certain odd card growing seasons. And because of the market supply demand, the variations and farmers grow off, and that's not have fetched the market. And there, this is where I advise everyone to cut them, you can dry them, you can sell there's a dried food, and that is also reduce the wastage. And also dried tomatoes much tastier than even fresh tomatoes. This is where I call the transformation of the farming system. Still is 80% of the world is a family-owned farming, and because industrial agriculture still is not going to feed only 20%, because of most of that go to the cattle feed or like animal feed, but real food still coming from the smallholder farming systems. And this is where the COVID landscape, and during the COVID time, we clearly understood that the future of the industry is the wellness, because the wellness is everything with the link to the not only just our human health, but the health of the people and the planet and all the surrounding thing. That's what continuum of the living. It's linked to everything, each other. A bird is happy around you, means you are getting the more energy, and the vice versa like that. So this is where we need to bring that the what's called a diversity landscape, and traveling different across the world in India, and see that this is used to be like ancient system of the things, like one third of the land they left for growing their own things and like that. And this is back to the what you called the back to the future, so that we are in the era of the tabulating systems. You have on the mobile screen and computer screens. We are looking at a lot of this, what we call the data-driven systems, and then moving towards the programmable systems of era, everything is automations and everything they're doing that. But this is where comes the local intelligence. Despite of all the technology, everything we have, and technology growing so rapidly, and digital augmentation become a kind of a like need of the hour. But I would say that local intelligence, still farmers, and that is a landscape that has huge intelligence hidden there. So they have to build that cognitive systems. And food is one would be on the what you call as a farm focus, and rather than looking into the big picture, looking to the start from the bottom where the soil microbes and the crop diversity and farm focus and farmer focus. And this is where we call the conscious systems of era, because of what we eat, how you grow the food, how we eat, and how you dispose, all that impact on the entire systems. So basically, we are living into the kind of a tragedy of commons. Oh, okay, I'm getting enough, but why should I worry about the rest? That is where we are living unconscious, the system of collapse. This is where we need to move towards the conscious system of where. And this is where we need to look into that, what you call a site-specific decisions, economically viable, economically sustainable. Because of ecology, economy should be not treated as two different things, because of we need to look into this, how viable the system can make it, and how this the capitalistic system move towards the ecologically concerned systems. We can build back that what is called the real food pyramid that build on the resilience of the functional systems, optimize the resource use efficiency, resilient cropping systems, settle intensification, that includes the financial inclusion that build. So this is what we call evolving era and paradigm shift in the diet pattern. Just look into that, what happens in the last 30, 40 years. And we move towards the what we call the animal-based protein, and look at the amount of the carbon emissions. Now I'm just talking about only carbon emissions. Of course, they have hundreds of other issues. And amount of this, the amount of carbon footprint have that when you move back and the consumers shift that plant-based diet to the most diversified diet systems that with low carbon footprint, and that's become basically to cut down nearly about 90% of burden on both on the humans and planetary health, and see how low is the carbon footprint of the plant-based diet, like for example the pulses and all those the plant-based nutritions and like millets and all the things. That brings the completely like a diversified systems. That brings the where I see the wellness is begins from where we change the diet systems, and then you can bring that into the farming system dynamics. I can turn that into monocropping to the diversified systems, and how this is what example we're doing that one, like an example of crop diversification, sustainable intensification in rice fallows. It can be applied to any cropping system dynamics. So that basically move away from the single commodity, only rice or only wheat, rather than go for compound productivity, multiple cropping system, intercropping system, trees in the landscape, edible landscape. All that could be integrated in the systems. We can bring back to the what we call this is where Dr. Ratan Lal was talking about the anthropogenicity driven soil and environmental degradations and its impact on the human health. And I see that when I deep look into this all the circles, and there is interconnected linkages to the damages and all this happening because of that links to the soil health and the biota and the crop diversity, I see that solution lies in the problems. If we bring that to the diversified farming system, change in the diet diversity and way we're eating and consuming, that basically fix the issue in the systems. And this is just a giving example here, one example from our own farming systems, and planting a multiple crops in for example, we are going the cotton in intensified systems, and just like within the cotton, because they are growing the white space, you can have different the monthly growing vegetables, like a short duration vegetables like a salad, greens and arugula, red radish, leafy amaranth, what you call rajgira, and coriander, dill, and spinach. And these crops are harvested almost like every 20 to 30 days interval. So the farmers can get a monthly income, like a salaried person can get it. And simultaneously that build us so resilient systems because of the interaction of the plants with the root system, because of this, all the things happens in the root zone. And that way, and cotton become resistant to pest. And this is basically a regular cotton crop requires 6 to 7 spray. And if you grow these intensified systems with the different crops and combinations and the symbiotic relations, basically not required to spray any chemicals, so that you are reducing the inputs. Almost like a 90% of the inputs is gone. Basically, farmers, most of the cropping systems save the food. they're like growing. They require 80% of the inputs, but that's where the dynamics toward moving. What we call the food health and wellness. This is where the future of the food and edible landscapes. The paradigm shift is required in terms of the diet pattern, and this is as I just like assumed, and based on the certain things, I estimated that at least by 2030, and as Lancet the EAT report recommended that we need to at least 50% of our plates should have the fruits and vegetables. And but current look into that entire average, it's less than 10% fresh fruits and vegetable eating because 90% using wrong food. And by 2030, at least 30% of the whole population shift to at least 30% of their plate consist of the fruits and vegetables. There's a huge paradigm shift. And if by 2050, if that reach the recommended the food for the better health and the wellness, that's 50%. I think this is where the world back to the normal food systems. I think so. This is what I would say that how food is going to play an important role. Of course, we not talk detail into each other aspect of the nutrition's play into our gut biome and link to our the brain health and cortisols. And gardening is not just like growing food is not just about food nutrition, but when you touch the soil, it has what called actinomycetes, activates your what called feel good hormones and reduce your stress hormone like cortisol and increase your serotonin, oxytocin. That's why you see that people coming from the farm after working, they always full of energy and exuberance despite of all the whole day tiredness of the work. This is what brings the growing the food and make the huge things. So this is where I conclude that every systems in the nature, they follow the functions and production follow the functions. Let's say leverage the changing diet pattern and changing technology and local intelligence, rebuild that functional food systems. And that is the basis for the health, wellness, and the future of the food systems. Often we talk about the heartfulness because of, and you have the peaceful of the mind is required a right food. That is what Ashtanga Yoga and all the yoga systems tell that when you eat right food, that's basically exuberance energy. When you eat the food, you should feel energetic. After eating food, it's not like lethargy. So after eating like a portal, like a porcelain, Dr. Ramakantha was telling, that is one of the most vital food. I tested the number of the experience that for the porcelain. I not went to detail on that one because you already explained. And if you eat that porcelain in the different way of cooking that way in the dal, and after eating that food is simple, like just millet roti as a regular chapati and that porcelain dal. And after eating food, you get the exuberance energy. Rather, instead of becoming lethargy, you got exuberance of energy. I thought, what's happening with body whenever I eat this one? Then I tested with our family, friends, and I think everyone thinks that after eating this one, but you know this purslane is a weed. Everywhere considers one of the world's biggest weed, and it is not a weed. It is a wonderful vegetable, and it can grow any climate from the like a harsh climate. There is no water available, any drought conditions, saline conditions. It is like a wide adaptable of the food system. This is where I call it a wild edibles are so important in our food systems. We have to bring back what we call a neglected species back to our food systems. That's where they build the functional system because of their do-breed system. They help in the nutrition cycle. They help other plants to grow well. So that we tested a lot of the experiment that if you grow this native species with other crops, that basically they help other crops to sustain. This is where we have to bring that the last freedom into the farming systems. I just give the one example of the purslane. There's hundreds of like that. So, and instead of considering the weed, bring back to the mainstream, the food systems. And this is, I see where the wellness, the begins that links to the heartfulness. It's basically food, health, wellness, and heartfulness. With that, I just conclude and open to the questions and remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Chandrashekhar. You had so much to offer, so much of information, and not just theoretical. It's all the more valuable because it's your life's experience. Grow food on full rooftop in America and Somalia and now in Egypt, and then you're putting to practice what you know. It's a wonderful thing. I hope we will have few more conversations. Next time, probably, how to make delicacies out of wild edible plants. You speak about one plant as to how to make a nice chutney purslane. can be a salad material, like
Yeah.
all you have to have is yogurt, chopped cucumber, a little bit of olive oil, pepper, and then chopped purslane, that's it, salt. Wonderful. So simple to very complicated dishes. We will talk about probably how to make use of these things. Some need cooking, some need to be consumed raw. We will talk all the nitty-gritty details of each particular plant and talk in detail, if it is fine with you.
Yeah.
Once again,
Sure.
immensely grateful for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Ramakant, and you are kind of such a the wonderful. I spent so much time with you in the Khana, so much knowledge about the food, and you are building that edible landscapes, amazing. And because of this, a lot of the people asking about how to grow the food at that, and there's so much a request coming in, and they publish in a few magazines and everything. Then what I started is called a biodiversity gardening groups. And now because of the WhatsApp is there are only 256 limitation, they moved to the Telegram. That is like nearly about 3,000 people that started the edible garden in the last few months. That is like a big thing. So if anyone interested, they can join this what's called something like we are discussing a lot about the wild the species and how to grow them at home and how to cook them. So it's basically like building a vital food systems and a sustainable living at a urban landscape to the farming systems.
Yeah.
So anyone can join them.
Yeah. Thanks to Reverend Daji, we have even, as you know, we are creating rainforests in Kana Shantivanam without steel, glass, concrete, things like that. Anyway, wonderful. We will hand it over to Abhirami to conclude.